Welcome to Employee Termination Tips. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal, and in this particular video we'll discuss the importance of thinking before you quit. Now, because of the predominance of Hollywood and the media from the United States into Canada, many Canadians get a lot of their preconceptions about employment law from the United States. And unfortunately, the United States operates on a very different system with respect to its employment standards, because much of the employment is employment at will. And what does employment at will mean? Well, it means that you can easily terminate an employee without having to even pay severance or provide notice, unless it's in a contract, unless you're talking about situations where there's discrimination, whistleblowing, and human rights violations. Now, this is clearly not the case in Canada, and Canadians need to be careful about this, especially when it comes to quitting, because you might see them quitting all over the place and looking glorified in Hollywood movies, but that's because there's not much to be gained by staying on a particular job, since the employer is not responsible for paying anything out. So what is the situation in Canada? Well, in Canada, you have two key aspects that would suggest that if your employer is thinking of terminating your position or wants to terminate your position, you should in fact be allowing them to terminate you as opposed to quitting. Or at a minimum, you should be engaging with legal counsel and discussing your options as to protecting your position, because from a legislative and statutory standpoint, employment standards legislation in the various provinces provides for applicable notice. And in the event that the employer does not want to provide you with notice of your termination, they are required to pay you termination pay in lieu of notice. Very substantial, very important concept, and important for you moving forward. Secondly, there is the aspect of severance pay, and severance pay generally comes out of the common law. There is another type of severance pay that's found in statute, but the primary one we're talking about is distinct from termination pay in lieu of notice and termination notice or working notice, and that is severance pay, and that is a further payment that would be due to employees who are terminated. Now, if you quit or resign your position, you're not necessarily entitled to that money. You can pursue money from your prior employer for discrimination aspects, constructive dismissal, and other matters which need to go through negotiations, lawsuits, court proceedings, and the like, and are very expensive. But when it comes to simply being terminated, being fired, it's preferable to let that happen as opposed to simply quitting, standing in front of there and having the glory of saying, before you terminate me, before you fire me, I'm quitting. Well, the employer is just going to, in Canada, be laughing because they're saving themselves a hell of a lot of money, in truth. But what you should do, take everything at a normal pace, Canadian pace, get your appropriate advice before you take any aggressive step, and proceed accordingly, because that's the way you're going to protect your interests, your family's finances, your finances. And that is why you need to take the time and not rush to judgment and quit. You need to think in advance, proceed properly, and recognize that you're in Canada, you're not in the United States, you're subject to Canadian laws, as is your employer. And there are substantial benefits accruing to you as an employee from the protections that are afforded to you, both at the common law through severance pay and through statutory law, through employment standards legislation, that you need to avail yourself of. And you need to get appropriate legal advice to move forward in these circumstances so you come out ahead. So think before you quit, and most times people should not be quitting, or at least not quitting before they have everything in order. Because if you can have the time to plan your stuff out, once you quit, remember, they're going to lock you out of everything. So if you're going to be locked out of everything, if you're going to be put in a bad position, why are you putting yourself in that position? You're in a far better position if you at least get legal advice prior to quitting. That is the strongest advice we can provide. Get legal advice before you quit, and that legal advice will probably tell you how to proceed so as to not directly quit or to position yourself so you're coming out in the best scenario, because this is not the United States. We're talking about Canada. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact myself. Thank you.